Hi, I'm Susie, and I decided to do my testimony today, trying to make it brief. Now, I have recorded my whole life story in detail and chronological order in 4 seasons on my playlist if you want to get more detail on anything that's there. But I'm going to try to keep it to about an hour. So I'm 72 years old, and I'm going to start with my earliest memories, which was about age 3 or 4. And I lived with my dad at that time. My dad was at home. He was 45 when he had me, and he was lifetime military in the Army. But he also, I later learned that he was actually in the CIA also. And my mom was Japanese. He married her when he was on R&R from the Korean War. My dad was in World War II, Korean War, and he got credit for Vietnam War, even though he didn't have boots on the ground there. He did work behind the scenes. So he was a lifetime 40 years in the military, and I grew up with a very patriotic heart. And my heart is breaking right now for America, what I'm seeing, what's going on. But so he married my mom, brought her over here, and we left a child in Japan that was my sister, my half sister. My mom had a baby before me, and she was not allowed to bring it over because the rules were very tight on immigration in those days, right after the war. And so we left my sister there. That was like a very traumatic thing throughout my life, that I never had a sister. And I had a sister that I was not allowed to be with. Sad story. So it was also a family secret, because back in those days, in the 50s and 60s, that was something you didn't talk about if there was an illegitimate child. Um, somebody that was just a secret, right? I wasn't allowed to talk about it. My mom cried about it a lot. Um, so my earliest memories are my grandfather sexually molesting me. We lived with them, or they lived with us. My dad was the only child, so he felt it his responsibility to take care of his parents. So they lived with us, and my grandma was just as sweet as could be. But my grandfather was also just as sweet as he could be, but he did that to me. I don't know if he thought that was okay somehow, but it hurt me. He didn't hurt me physically. He was he never there was no penetration. It was just touching, rubbing, you know, but no penetration, thank God for that. I mean, I was only we're talking about 3, 4 years old to begin with. It went on. He always said that was our little secret, right? This is how I love you, and this is our secret, and never tell anybody because they won't understand or whatever. So that went on often up until I think I was probably 7 or 8 years old. When I stopped it, I was old enough to, I mean, I never felt good about it. I never enjoyed it, but um, I did love my grandfather. And he is actually the one who read the Bible to me, which is so sick and so sad. But there was a children's Bible in the house. I guess they bought it for me. And it was a picture Bible. And it had pictures from the whole Bible in it. And I would sit on his lap, and he would show me, tell me the Bible stories. And he was the only one in the house that did that for me. And I really enjoyed that a lot. But when I was 7 or 8, I did I gradually stayed away from him more and more. And I got to the point where I just started saying no. And he was pretty old at that time because he died when I was 10. And so that was, he was like 77 or 76 years old, and he had had several heart attacks and strokes by that time. So he didn't, you know, pursue me too much after that because, he was just old. And I mean, he was having a hard time walking around. He walked with a cane, and he was slow by that time. So, um, but I believe that that's why God really took care of me my whole life. And when I was 3 or 4 years old, same time this started happening with my grandfather, a neighbor brought me to church. Came over, a little boy I played with came over one Sunday, asked if I could go to church with them. So I went. It was the seventh day, it was the Assembly of God church, and I loved it. I just ate it up. And they had a junior church before church or during church. They had a junior church for the kids, and before that, they had Sunday school. So I was like 3 hours getting taught at that church. And they brought me every week, every Sunday, and I just loved it. And then we moved when I was 5 years old. We moved to Long Branch, New Jersey, which is a lovely city right on the beach in New Jersey, only 30 miles from New York City. So bought a nice big house, a big old, like historical. It was a historical house. It was over 100 years old when my father bought it, and paid $11,000 for it. And that was like in 1957. And anyway, we moved there, and when I was 7 years old, a neighbor across the street from me brought me to the Methodist church, which was just a block away. So I started going there instead. And I loved that too. Um, so I accepted Christ when I was 3 or 4 years old. And I was so happy to have a father in heaven because my daddy was drunk all the time. And he was not close to me in a good way. He didn't pay a lot. He didn't do a lot with me like he did. Yes, he was a daddy to me, um, but he was a drunk, and there was some violence in the house because of his drinking. My grandma, and my grandfather, they three did not drink at all. So they were always on his case. Well, especially my mother. My mother was always on his case about being drunk. And then he would yell at her, and they would start screaming at each other. And I remember one day, it's the only violence I really remember between them was my mother throwing tools at him, like hammer, screwdrivers, dangerous tools thrown at him when he was trying to fix something. I think he was hanging pictures. So my house was not a good place. Um, my grandmother hated my mother because my grandmother was very prejudiced against everything. She was my my father's side were just white. They were white, and they had my grandfather's side had some really good roots that went way back, one of the largest documented families in history. We have like an encyclopedia of our family that goes way back, like to the Braveheart days, and one of my ancestors was a knight, and one of my ancestors was a famous inventor. And anyway, a real good family history on my father's side. My grandmother was French, German, and Dutch. and my father was English, Welsh, and Scotch on my father's side. So my grandmother hated my mother because she was not Caucasian from Europe, right? And so that was very hard for my mom, of course. I mean, she's in a new country. She was working full time. She went to work in a factory. She was a seamstress, and very difficult for my mom. And while she was at work, my grandma took care of me, and my grandmother poisoned me. My grandmother treated me very well, just like the ideal grandma. But she poisoned me with always saying bad things about my mother and telling me that not to be like her and all like that, and that I had to remove myself from the Japanese side of me and be white, because the Japanese side, everything bad in me was Japanese. If I did any little thing wrong, that's your Japanese blood coming out of you. So that's the way I grew up, being ashamed of what I was, and having a very sad family life, you know. So I was smart in school. I was always at the top of my class. Um, and through school, in the beginning, I was very shy. And then as the years went on, I got to have more friends. And by the time I was uh, 10 years old, I was quite popular. I had a lot of friends, and I think a lot of the reason for that was that I was available so much because I did not have rules in my home. And also, when we moved, when I was 5 years old, we moved, and right around that time, I think that's when my dad went into the CIA. And anyway, he was no longer home ever. He was transferred to different missile bases all over the country, and he only came home like 3 weeks out of the year at Christmas time, and maybe like 2 weeks at Christmas and 1 week, during the summer or something. I would see him, and that was it. And as a little child, that was very difficult because a year's time for a child is like forever. And I wouldn't see my dad for nearly a year. He didn't call. I didn't talk to him on the phone. He didn't write letters or anything like that. And when he came home, it was just like meeting him all over again. And my grandma and my mom, they would tell me, Daddy's coming home. And there was even a song out in the early 60s around that time when Daddy's Home. That was a song, and they would play the song and talk about Daddy's coming home. And to me, he was a stranger every time because he was gone so long. I felt like I didn't even know him, and he was here for such a short period of time. I didn't feel like I even knew him. And then after I was about 10, he did write to me occasionally, maybe once or twice a year, and every letter was about how he was sorry and procrastinating. And it was just weird. Very, it was like a non relationship that I had with him. And my mom did not know the American ways. She had a lot of Japanese friends. So many servicemen had married Japanese, and because Fort Monmouth was near where we lived, there was many Japanese in the area, and at her job there was many Japanese ladies. So she had many Japanese friends, so she could keep up with the language and the culture and all that. So she was slow learning to become American, really. And she didn't talk real good, but she did get her citizenship, which she was very, very proud of being an American citizen. And I guess that's why I have such a heart for immigrants, you know. Um, anyway, so I did real good in school and I became popular, I think because kids were free at my house. They could come and go as they pleased. They didn't even knock on the door or ring the doorbell. They would just come in and come upstairs to my room. They would be in and out at all hours whenever they wanted. I could go in and out at all hours whenever I wanted. My mom had no control over me, and I didn't have rules. I didn't have chores. I didn't have a curfew. I never had punishment. My punishment was my mom would yell at me. She would yell and scream at me. She hit me with the fly swatter a couple times, which was a joke, right? But I was a little scared of her when she yelled at and screamed at me because um, she acted crazy. I thought she was out of her mind. I thought, it was like a crazy person, yelling and screaming at me. So that did scare me. Um, so I started getting interested in boys, normal age, I guess, like around 10, 12 years old. And when we were 10, maybe we started young. I don't know if everybody in other neighborhoods are like this, but the place was usually my garage, and everybody would come after school and we would play spin the bottle. And, so the kissing started when we were 10 years old. And, you know, some of boyfriends and girlfriends started getting together. And my first real boyfriend was when I was 12 and 13. For 2 years, I was going steady with one kid. And we, thank God, we didn't have sex, but did a lot of making out on my couch because my mother allowed that. She wouldn't disturb us or anything. It was like, oh, Susie's in there with her boyfriend, and we were alone. And anyway, thank God we didn't have sex. But one day we made a plan that we were going to, but praise God, he intervened and it didn't happen as planned. So after that, we broke up when high school started, and there was so many boys at the big high school that I went to. And I got a little boy crazy. I had my eye on all the good-looking guys, and I ended up having my next boyfriend, I guess, was when I was 15, and I did have sex with him. He kind of didn't physically force me, but mentally, emotionally forced me into it with pressured me a lot, said he would break up with me if I didn't put out. All the other girls were doing it. That's what he told me. And so I gave in, and we had regular sex for 2 years. And then we did break up. And before we broke up, the first year with him was pretty good, that we were, he treated me nice and I was happy and all that. We did drink. He was just one grade above me, a year and a half older than me, but he was able to get beer from somebody, and he started me drinking. I started smoking cigarettes, by the way, when I was 14. Um, my mom started buying me cartons of cigarettes, and we would give them. My mom bought cigarettes for me and my friends, and they would even put in their order what kind they wanted. That's the kind of mother I had. Very permissive. And anyway, so back to the boyfriends. um, First year with him was good. We thought we were in love, at least I did, and he treated me very, very good. Bought me gifts and, brought me to all the parties and everything. I was his girl. And then the second year he started cheating on me, but me and him continued to have sex because we had gotten to where we were having it regularly. And all of you know that once you start doing it regularly, it's really hard to not to. Um, so it was easy for us to continue doing it, even though he got another girlfriend on the side. I mean, it wasn't like I allowed it, but we kind of had an agreement, and I started seeing other guys too. So we both were dating others, but we were still having sex for another year until I finally cut it off for good. But during that time, at one point, um, when he was with a different girl and he was so blatant about it, um, actually drove her around town in my mom's brand new car and then laughed at me when he handed me the keys back. That's how bad it was. And I was so ashamed, so angry, so hurt. I tried to kill myself that night. Um, and praise God, again, God intervened and it didn't happen. I told my best friend. She called her mother. She told her mother called my mother. I lied and said, see, I had taken a lot of pills. I lied and said, oh, I was just fooling around, I was just joking with my girlfriend. I wouldn't really do that, but I really did, and I really wanted to die. I took like about 20 pills, two different kinds, and nothing happened. The next morning I woke up like usual. I thought I was dead. It was kind of funny, but anyway, nothing happened. God saved me. So to move on quickly as possible, high school was horrible for me. Some classes I did well, some I didn't. The ones I liked, the teachers I did well. I had no help. I had nobody at home to help me with the subjects that I struggled with, which was mostly biology, I think. Um, anyway, after the first year of high school, um, I didn't do great in algebra. They did move me on to algebra 2, though, but biology, I barely got by with a D. Um, I didn't have interest, I didn't have a good teacher, and I didn't understand a lot. And anyway, my guidance counselor said, now I have a high IQ, above average IQ. My dad was actually a genius. That's why they put him in the CIA. I'm not a genius, but I am high IQ. And I had a lousy guidance counselor. Like I say, I was in the top of my class all the way through school up until high school. Ninth grade, I got half A's and the other half I struggled with. So my guidance counselor told me at the end of the year that I was not college material and I needed to be a secretary, put me into all business classes. So what I had wanted, my dream was to be a teacher, but all of a sudden I'm supposed to be a secretary, which I didn't know the first thing about. But I went through 3 years of business education and I ended up going into that when I graduated. But sadly, I did not go to college um, because my guidance counselor didn't direct me that way. My mother always yelled at me that I was going to go to college. She told me I was going to be Miss America and I was going to go to college. But she never, channeled me into either of those things. I didn't know how to go to college. I didn't know I didn't know about the SATs. I didn't even know about them. I didn't know how to apply to a college or anything. So I just did what my guidance counselor told me. And right after school, I became a secretary. But it wasn't really a secretary. It was more like an assistant at a really crummy job right after school. But I worked in offices. Eventually, I got into accounting and I moved up the ladder in the corporate world somewhat. And I did very well with a career for someone who did not go to college anyway. But so we'll move back again. Jumping back. So I went like I fell in love many times, okay, and I did not value myself because I gave away my virginity at 15 and because I was sexually molested. And after that, and I didn't never felt like I had a good body. I was very flat chested, very thin, flat chested, and I felt deficient sexually. So somehow I felt like because I didn't have a attractive body, which back in those days, like Marilyn Monroe was the attractive body, right? Um, Nowadays, thank God, people appreciate different body types. But back then, if you didn't look like Marilyn Monroe, you were kind of sorry on that scale, right? Anyway, I had nothing. I was just flat chested and skinny and just felt like a loser in that area. But I felt like I was good at sex because I was experienced at it. I knew what guys liked and I enjoyed it and I felt like it was something I could do um, that made men happy. Um, so that was where my confidence was, sad to say. And so I had several different boyfriends and then I actually I'm gonna another thing that happened, okay? There was one kid. Okay, I'm going to tell you, my grandmother was very, very prejudiced, as I said, right? And when I was in my senior year of high school, I fell in love with a black guy, and we dated throughout my senior year. And at the end of senior year, he broke up with me, told me that his family would never accept our relationship, and he wanted to go to college. He had ideas of going to college and having a great career, making money and all that. And, he kind of thought I was a loser because I didn't have any plan after high school. I just had no idea what I was going to do and I didn't really care. And so he broke up with me, broke my heart. I didn't get to go to my senior prom because of that. I did go to 3 other proms with different guys previously. But anyway, after that, I was a hippie by that time, senior year, okay? Woodstock happened August before my senior year. I didn't go, but I was very aware of it. I was totally into that hippie culture, all that. I I tried smoking pot a couple times in high school, but never hardly at all. Didn't do it much. Did drink beer and some of that like Boone's Farm apple wine, whatever, But and I probably got drunk a few. I definitely got drunk a few other times. In fact, I was going to fraternity parties, college fraternity parties, when I was 16 years old with my girlfriends. Um, and one time I passed out. I could have been raped. I could have been gang raped. I passed out, woke up in somebody's bed with my girlfriend sitting next to me. Thank God. Again, he saved me from something that could have been a horrible, horrible thing. Okay, so then anyway, I was really the hippie lifestyle. And then after high school, I started doing other drugs, started smoking more pot, doing other drugs. I was hitchhiking, um, not really out of necessity so much, just it was just a thing we did. And I picked up hitchhikers when I had a car. And anyway, I did start working though, and I always had a job. Started working when I was 15 with a part-time job. And then I always worked full time. I lived at my mother's until I was 21. When I was 19, I met the guy who I ended up marrying 6 years later, and he was really a pothead. And so I smoked a lot of weed with him, and he was also a vegetarian. So I started eating healthy and became um, really health conscious. We felt like somehow the eating healthy, we were juicing carrot juice and stuff, and thinking that the healthy eating um, would counteract the drugs that we did. And maybe it did, actually, because we were pretty healthy at that time anyway. But so when I was 19, I went to Puerto Rico. I was there for 5 months with him and two friends. That was quite an adventure. And I learned a lot there about life. And that's when I really came out of my shell and became confident in myself, because I had to step out for myself when I was living there. A few times I was with Bob, and he was good with me, but there was a few times when I had to really take care of myself. So I learned that I was capable of doing that. And after we came back from that 5 months in Puerto Rico, I never went back to live with my family again. I was 21, and Bob and I, we moved in together, and we had already been together for 2 years dating, and we lived together for 4 years, and then I got pregnant because I wanted to. I was 24 years old, and I decided I wanted to get pregnant. Went off the birth control pills, and we got married. But before that, I got to say, when I was 19, when we first started dating, I had only been dating him for 2 months, and I got pregnant. And thank God I never did with any of those other guys I was with before that. But I got pregnant, and Bob was going to marry me, but we had only been together for 2 months. I was not in love with him. I liked him a lot, but I was not madly in love with him. In fact, I still had feelings for the guy I just broke up with. And he said he would marry me, but I said, no, I wasn't ready for that. And I just didn't want to have a baby. I didn't feel ready to be a mother. I never had those fantasies of a white wedding or being married with kids. I never had fantasies like that. I never imagined it. A lot of my girlfriends did, but I never thought that way. Somehow, I always felt different. I always felt different from everybody else. And I kind of felt like that was never for me when I was that age, when everybody else was thinking about it. Anyway, when I got pregnant, see, my mom had always told me, my mom knew I was having sex with Bob, who became my husband later. She knew that, of course. I mean, and then we went to Puerto Rico together and all. But she probably knew that, I had so many boyfriends, and I was with that one guy for 2 years, the guy that from age 15 to 17 I was having sex with. I dated him for 2 years. I think she knew. Anyway, she always yelled at me and said, if you ever get pregnant, I kill you. That's the way she talked. I kill you. I kill you with the kitchen knife in her hand. I kill you, then I kill the baby, then I kill myself. That's the way she said it, and I believed her because I saw my mom get really crazy when she would get angry. I saw her throw things, and she scared me when she got angry, and I really believed she would do that. So when I got pregnant, I had an abortion. I believed my mom would kill me, and if I had the baby, if I wanted to have the baby, and I didn't even want to face it. The whole thought of it scared me, and honest truth, I didn't think of it as a life. I just thought of it like a blob, like a big blood clot growing inside of me, because I found out right away. I went to, as soon as I was very regular, and as soon as I missed a period, I went to doctor right away, because I had several girlfriends that already had abortions, and I had one girlfriend that already had a baby, and others in high school that I wasn't so close with that I knew of. In fact, they had a school, a special classroom set up for the unwed pregnant women, or even if they were married, whatever. For the pregnant girls that couldn't finish high school, they had a special, so they'd go to school with their babies or when they were pregnant. And so it was, I mean, there was a lot of it in my high school going on. It wasn't a big deal to me. And I mean, my girlfriend told me exactly where to go and what it was going to be like to have the abortion. We split the price. It was only $160 in New York City, which was the only place in the country where it was legal at that time. And it was convenient for us. It was, a short drive there. So I had that done, and tell you the honest truth, I only thought of it as a relief. Now, like I told you, I accepted Christ when I was young. I went to that Methodist Sunday school, and I would stay for church all the way until I was 12 years old. And at age 12, my father was home at one time when they wanted me to get confirmed and become a member of the church. And my father put his foot down and said, "No way, no way." He told me, he said he didn't want me going to that church anymore, any church. He said, all they want is your money. And so I stopped going to church at that point. Now, I still consider myself a Christian. I still believed I still prayed every night. And, but of course, I wasn't growing in Christ. I wasn't maturing. I had a very childlike idea of Jesus. And, I probably did confess and repent about the abortion, but I didn't have regret in my heart. I felt just um, relief at that point. It was just something I didn't have to worry about. And anyway, we did end up getting married for I was with him after 6 years of being with him. We got married. We had a baby. I started at age 24. Late Great Planet Earth came home with Bob. Somebody, he comes home and he says this, uh, Jesus freak gave me this book, and he dropped it on the kitchen table, and I read it and I got all excited about Jesus. And I never heard of him coming again, of a second coming or anything. And I was just so excited about it. And I started praying a different kind of prayer, an adult kind of prayer, and started telling God that I wanted a Christian family. I wanted to get married and have children and raise them in the church, like other families that I saw in the church, like my girlfriend's families that went to church together. And I always went alone with my other. I had a couple girlfriends that their parents didn't go, that we would go to church together, without our parents. And anyway, God heard my prayers, and we got married. We went to, did the hippie thing with the dog, the baby, and the van, and we drove cross country to California, to San Diego, and got a thing in the mail. It was from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, invited me to a Revelation seminar. So I begged my husband to come with me the first time because I was still a little bit shy about doing things on my own. And he came with me. He was Catholic, by the way. And also, when I was going to get married, my soon-to-be mother-in-law wanted me to become Catholic, and I refused because I was a Protestant. I only knew two churches, Assembly of God and Methodist Church, and I liked them both. And I knew a little about the Catholic Church because I had Catholic friends and I had visited with them a couple times, and I knew it wasn't for me. There was things that I didn't like and I didn't understand about the Catholic Church. So I just said flat out, no, I'm not going to do it. And my husband didn't care. You know, he believed in God, but not that much, whatever. He didn't care. But we went to this Seventh Day Adventist, the Seventh Day Adventist Bible study on Revelation first night, and the pastor was Bob Boney. He wrote the book The Cross and the Needle. He was a former heroin addict, and he gave his testimony the first night, and we read the first chapter of Revelation, and it was so perfect because one of the reasons I wanted to leave California was because a lot of our friends, Bob's friends, especially the men, were starting to do heroin. We had done many different kinds of drugs. They were starting to get hooked on heroin. And I wanted to get away from that. I didn't want my husband getting hooked on heroin. I did try it to experiment. I didn't do the needle. I snorted it a couple times. But anyway, we left and got to get away from that, right? And the ex-heroin addict pastor was perfect to talk to my husband. And it reached him. His testimony reached him, and that first chapter of Revelation turned us both on to the Bible, and we wanted to read more, and we just kept on coming. Let me tell you, that first night, Pastor was at the door, and he shook our hands, and we introduced ourselves. Of course, we had the baby in arms, and he put his hand on my husband's shoulder, and he said, "May your tribe increase." 2 years later, I was pregnant with twins. So I believe that blessing was really answered by God that way. And that pastor was the first one waiting for us on our front steps when we came home from the hospital with the twins. So needless to say, we got really into the church. We went to every Revelation session 4 days a week. We were baptized at the end of it. Both of us together were baptized. We became involved in the church. We ended up moving out in the country where the church had bought a retreat, rehab kind of place, and my husband was starting to paint it as a job there, and we moved way out in the country, which I hated. Well, we had a wildfire, and I'm not going to go into detail about it, but God was there, saved me, saved my house, and my dog and my baby. I mean, we were very close to the wildfire. So close, I had to literally run from it. And I mean, I had blisters this big on the bottom of my feet from running barefoot from the flames. My story is out there about that. And I actually saw my angels when I was running. And anyway, so my faith is growing, obviously. I'm studying the Bible, and Seventh-day Adventist Church people, they were great to us. And we both got very involved. I started teaching in the church. I did a lot of things. Vacation Bible School. I became director of Vacation Bible School. I was church treasurer. I was community services leader. I was a deaconess. I was a teacher. I did adult teaching and kids. Um, so I was very active in the church. My husband became deacon, then he eventually became elder, head elder even. Um, so let's see. Very sadly, my husband cheated on me. He got a job in the hospital, and he met somebody in the hospital, cheated on me, repented, stepped away from that relationship. I forgave him. Then shortly after, I don't remember if it was a year or two later or just a couple months later, I don't remember, but shortly after that happened again with another woman in the hospital. And this time he didn't stop. And anyway, we ended up divorcing. And again, all the details are out there in my playlist because it's really interesting what all happened and how God's hand was in it was amazing. But so we divorced very sadly, and I decided that I had to go start a new life because I'm in a different place because it was really hard to stay in that same church and that same community when they all saw us as a couple, and we devastated the church. I mean, he was head elder in the church and we were between pastors. He was actually head of the church when all this was happening. It was such a nightmare. Um, but I decided, so I had my 20-year reunion and I ended up reuniting with the guy that I was in love with when I was a senior in high school. He was living in Atlanta. Um, so he encouraged me to move to Atlanta. Didn't promise me anything, but when I researched Atlanta, I decided it looked like a good place to go. I wanted to start a new life, and I was able to move there. Had full custody of my three children, and I just picked up and drove cross country and got settled into Atlanta, got a job quickly, and um, right away went back to Seventh Day Adventist Church. They threw me right in there teaching again, and then a little while later, um, well, I started dating a little bit, and eventually I met the man that I ended up marrying. We met and I got married very quickly after 4 months from meeting him. And the reason I was in a hurry was because my kids needed a dad. They really needed a dad. My daughter really got out of control. She was a teenager now, and she was uh, 13 when we got to Atlanta, and my twins were 11, 12, 11, right around that age anyway. They're 2.5 years apart. So, yeah, my daughter was in the eighth grade. In fact, um, bit of trivia, she was an usher, the singer Usher. She was in his eighth grade class in Atlanta. Anyway, I started dating a little, got married again, and my husband, he was a Baptist, not a real strong, not strong Baptist, not real dedicated Christian, but he was a believer. He respected that I was. And I said to him, I keep Sabbath because I was Seventh Day Adventist. I keep Sabbath. I explained to him about Sabbath, why I keep it. And he had three sons of his own that became my stepsons. Two of them moved in with us. So we had 5 kids living with us, right? And I said, we're going to do chores on Sunday, not on Sabbath. And, I said, I don't expect you to, become a Seventh Day Adventist, but I, I need for you to respect my faith, in order to marry you. And he did. So, he did go to church with me. He became friends with the pastor. In fact, they used to play golf together. My second husband was very generous, and he was making really good money, and he gave a lot to the church, and that was all good. And our kids got along great. But then that church started. There became a breakaway church. Some of the younger members of the church decided they wanted to go on Sunday to bring people that would go to church on Sunday to bring them into the church. And then after they come to the church on Sunday, they would teach them about Sabbath, right? That was the strategy. So they also wanted to do the contemporary music, which they did not do in the Seventh Day Adventist. When I was going there, they did not. There was no drums in the church, no electric guitars. It was just the heritage singers. They were the one and only contemporary style group, and they were just singers, with the background. They didn't have a band. Um, anyway, so um, this breakaway church, I like the idea of it now. I was in my 40s, but they were in their 20s. But I still was. And I wanted my kids to enjoy that music and everything. So Mike and I, my husband, we started going to this breakaway church and became friendly with the pastor there and everything. And very sadly, my stepson, when he was 18 years old, he had been in trouble, and we went through a lot of trauma with the teenage kids. You can imagine having 5 teenagers. Um, it was very, very hectic, very difficult time for us as parents. And my daughter, she had gotten very wild, like I was saying before I got married. And then she actually had run away. She went and lived with her dad for just a couple months. And then my husband got her back. And anyway, difficult time. My daughter gave me really, really very, very hard struggle from the ages of 14 to 16. And when she was 16, she straightened up and she was heading on a really bad path. But she straightened up and ended up getting straight A's, full scholarship to University of Georgia. And anyway, she did great after that. But um, my twin boys had struggles through school also. And his boys were big athletes, but the one did get in trouble. And he ended up killing himself. He shot himself. And as you can imagine, devastated the whole family, especially his dad. And he went into a deep, dark depression. 4.5 years later, I filed for divorce because I did not see him ever coming out of it. He didn't care. He gave up on the whole rest of the family. He lost his job. He couldn't work. It was just one thing after another, domino effect, you could say. And during that time, I stopped going to that Adventist church because they did not help. The Adventists believe that suicide is not forgivable, and they didn't help us. They did the funeral, but they didn't help us afterwards. We got no counseling. I tried to get him to some marriage counseling, and he wouldn't go. And anyway, it was just all downhill. It was terrible, and ended up divorcing, sadly. And after that, so after I broke away from the Adventist church, I went back to Methodist church. It was even before we divorced. I started going to the Methodist church because there was one close to me. It was quite a drive to the Adventist church also. And I liked it. I liked the Methodist church. And I went there for a while, not so faithfully, and I didn't get involved like I was in the other church. But then after a while, I discovered North Point Mega Church, Andy Stanley's church, and I loved it. I went to that church one day by myself, and it was just so awesome. And as soon as I sat down, I just got that feeling of God's presence just overwhelmed me, pins and needles, and I just knew this is where I belong. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I stayed there for 15 years. I loved that church. Not perfect. No church is perfect on this earth, I don't believe. But I definitely bumped up a level in my walk, my relationship with Christ. Uh, I bumped up a big level, maybe 10 steps. Andy Stanley, great teacher. um, helped me so much. So after that, anyway, I stayed in that church until I retired, and I also moved up the corporate ladder. I did very well in my career for someone who never even went to college. Um, they said when I got hired into my first big corporate job, the standard was they said 4 years of college or 8 years of experience. And I had the 8 years of experience. That's how I was able to get into finance in that company. And then 2009, I got laid off, and I was able to go get another big corporate job doing the same type of thing. God was with me completely because I had given up. I started having physical problems in my 40s. I went out on disability twice because my arthritis got so bad I couldn't sit and type anymore. My back and my hands, my fingers and my back were just killing me. I couldn't do it anymore. I started going to chiropractors and rheumatologists and all that. I was doing hydrocodone, and I was just a mess. I had to stop all the sports I was doing. I was playing sports and stuff, and I had to stop all that. I couldn't. I went on disability twice, and 2 times I was not able to go back after the 12 weeks. I had to go on to long term, and then when I tried, I was 60 years old when I was laid off my uh, good job that I was at for 17 years. 60 years old, interviewing my butt off, and I couldn't get hired. And I finally gave up. I just gave up, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And my son was living with me at the time, and he was going through his own personal problems. My one son has had struggles all of his life, and all of his life, one thing after another has been difficult for him to this day. And so he and I were going through a rough time, and I just gave up. I was on LinkedIn with my resume out there, but I stopped trying. And one day I got a phone call. Now I didn't usually answer the phone. I wasn't expecting anybody anymore because I gave up about getting a job. I started what I did now, I remember. I started just trying to get any old job because I felt like they're not hiring me because I'm 60 years old. Those big companies, they want younger people. I had one actually tell me they were a very young, dynamic company, and they weren't looking to hire anybody that was getting ready to retire. And so I probably could have sued them for discrimination, but anyway, I just gave up. Um, and one day after I gave up, I answered the phone when a strange number called probably because I was just bored, but it was God. Because when I answered the phone, it was somebody who saw my resume online somewhere, and probably at LinkedIn, I guess, said they saw my resume. They said, "You are the perfect what we are looking for." And they happened to be very close to me. It was convenient. And I said, "Well, I'm only looking for part-time." And they said, "We can give you part-time." So I thought, "Oh, this is going to be perfect." And I said part-time because my health was not good. It was too much for me to sit 8 hours anymore at a job at the desk typing all day for 8 hours. I couldn't do it. So I figured I can do 6 hours. I could manage 6 hours. And I went there, told them 6 hours. They said they would work with me. And they hired me that same day, where I was used to going to these big companies and going back for a second and third interview all the time. And they hired me. They interviewed me and hired me that same day. It was God, totally. And it was the best group of people, almost all Christians at that job. And I enjoyed working there for the 5 years until I retired. And then I retired and moved to Florida, where I am now, to a senior community. And I went to a church here. I went and checked out, visited several churches. Um, and then I went to the one, and again, I got that feeling came over me, and I knew God was telling me this is the one. And I started teaching the pre-K at that church. I did that for a little over a year, and then COVID happened. And COVID happened, and after that, I got and tried to stay a distance. I did go to sunrise service at the beach a little bit, but I didn't want to go and sit inside. Uh, I started watching more on YouTube, and I got out of the habit of going to church, to tell you the honest truth. And then when after COVID was over and all, I just got used to the YouTube, different pastors and Bible studies, and I was reading on my own. And I started when I came to this community I'm at. They have a lot of activities for the seniors, but I noticed there was no Bible study, and it was something that I wanted to do my whole life because from my whole adult life. I had like a fantasy of doing a Bible study with people from different churches because I was in many small groups doing Bible study from North Point Church in the Atlanta mega church. Andy Stanley encouraged the small groups, so I was in like four different small groups, um, and did a lot of Bible study there. Uh, but my fantasy was to have a Bible study that was open, very open to everybody, no matter what church they went to or whether they didn't go to church or whatever their background was. And so when I came into the senior community, I was able to do this, and I started Bible study um, before, as soon as I got here. I started Bible study, and when COVID hit, there was 18 people coming, and from all different backgrounds. It was really cool. And then anyway, we continued because over here where I was in Florida, they weren't real strict. Everything shut down only for like 2 months or something, and then it started up again. People wore masks, people distanced, whatever. But anyway, I wanted to go through the whole Bible. That was my other fantasy, to do that with the group. And that's what I did. That's how I advertised the group, and started in Genesis, went all the way through to 2.5 years to finish. And after I finished, I did a little bit here and there, different kinds of studies. I experimented with a couple different ways to do it. But then I decided to hand it over to somebody else, and I still go. It's the Bible study group is still going on now, almost 7 years later, and with a different leader, but I still go. So praise God for that. Um, I guess that's it. I'll say that I continued dating a lot through in Atlanta, and a little bit after I moved here. I've had repeated struggles in my walk with men. Men have been a big problem for me. I mean, they've been good, they've been fun, and I fell in love so many times, but I could never get it right. And it's been a big repeated problem in my life. And a couple times I swore off men. I said I was done, and then something would always happen, and somebody would pop up and ask me out. And every time it happened, I would think it was from God. I would always think it was from God. If they were either a Christian, or if they weren't a Christian, I felt like I was supposed to lead them to Christ. And this went on and on anyway, over and over and over again. The one long relationship I had after my divorce in Atlanta, I did date a fundamental Baptist ex-pastor, and we dated for 7 years, and it was good and it wasn't good. And I finally broke it up when I turned 60, And since then, nothing has lasted very well. Um, so that's pretty much, I guess, it. My daughter has, um, she's a little bit of a prodigal. She had very strong faith as when she was young, and she was in the church, got baptized when she was 21, but then she got moved around, got different friends in college and all, and after that, and she kind of got into what I would call New Age. Um, but I mean, she tells me she still believes, but uh, I wish she was more dedicated to Jesus. That's all I'm going to say. I love her dearly. She knows that. We have a great relationship. We didn't for many years, um, but we have now for many years had a great relationship. She's been very good to me. She and her guy, she's getting married soon. Um, it will be her second marriage. Anyway, she's been with this guy for a long time and they're getting married now. I'm very happy. But she and him both are very, very generous and they do tons of volunteer work. Um, and she has a really good heart for people. Um, anyway, so I am proud of my daughter and I pray and I trust that she's going to come back 100% for Jesus. I dedicated to her. I dedicated her as a baby, and I am holding on to the promise that when you train up your child in the way they should go, they will not depart from it. When they get old, they will not depart from it. That's in the Proverbs, and I claim that promise for my kids. And my sons are both strong of faith. Um, they both they both have been baptized. They both watch a lot of YouTube. They have their favorite pastors. Um, anyway, I'm happy for their faith, and I did learn 5 years ago or more, 5 or 6 years ago, 5 years ago. It's 5 years ago. I learned I have a fatal disease, Epstein-Barr, chronic active Epstein-Barr. They give you a 5-year prognosis. And by the way, when I was in my 40s, my rheumatologist said, I see you in a wheelchair by the time you're 60. Well, that didn't happen. And I'm still exercising even, but not as much as I was. And I got stem cells, which have helped my arthritis immensely. The rheumatoid is gone. I got stem cells 8 years ago. And the Epstein-Barr, it might have helped the Epstein-Barr some. Um, I think my lifestyle helps the Epstein-Barr a lot because I have a healthy lifestyle. Um, and I have really since I was 19. But it is getting me. It causes mostly fatigue, but I have some other health problems that are probably related to Epstein-Barr, my lungs, my heart, and now I'm having something with my muscles, something going on with my muscles, and I think they might all be related to Epstein-Barr. But I'm still very much alive, and I expect if Jesus doesn't come, I probably have a couple more years. I'm not bedridden yet, but I'm getting there because I only have energy a portion of every day, and some days I have none. So it's a struggle, and I've cut back on my social activity way back where I don't do hardly any, very little social activity, and I'm lonely. I'm alone most of the time, and after having so many men throughout my life, here I am in my old age with nobody. But I do have my children, my three. One is close to me, moved down to Florida to be close with me, thank God. And um, the other two are at a distance, and I don't get to see them as much as I would like to, but they do keep in touch. And I'm just so thankful that we are close even in our distance. And I'm so thankful for God, for Jesus, and He's given me this YouTube ministry now. I hope you, if anybody's coming on just for my testimony, I hope you watch, because God has bumped me up a level just now in 2025, that He's given me messages that I am delivering on YouTube. And He's given me a few dreams and visions, just a few short things, very brief, but He's using me. I do feel like I have a YouTube ministry with a few dedicated followers, and that's why I'm doing this, so you can know more about me, know who you're listening to. And I look forward to seeing all of you soon in the clouds with our Savior, Jesus Christ. Praise Him and don't let anything discourage you. You see, I've been through a lot and I probably left out quite a bit also. Um, Thanks for watching. God bless you.